Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Plenty going on in the NBA today. We are going to do a look at the NBA standings, taking a look at exactly where each team is, what's surprising, what's not surprising, everything in between. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, here we go. We're hitting that point in the season where we're starting to figure out who's who, what
hmm
teams really are. We're starting to get a better sense of that. So I've been looking forward to doing our update on the standings so we can see exactly where teams are starting to slot in.
Yeah, we're rapidly approaching that quarter pole of the season, which seems crazy, right? If we started a little over a month ago, but that's how quick this early part of the season goes. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this and get a look and see what do we think's real, what's maybe not so real, and have that conversation. So yeah, it should be a fun episode.
All right. So first, before we dive into it, quick reminder for anybody who's over on the YouTube channel, make sure that you do subscribe, turn on those notifications. We want to run those subscribers up as much as we can heading into this Thanksgiving holiday weekend. And of course, over on the podcast side, make sure you do follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
Mhm.
wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate all the growth that we've seen on this show. Without further ado, let's get into the standings. Starting with the Eastern Conference, Keith, I know you're happy to see that your Celtics, despite having lost their last game, are sitting in the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, 13-4, with the Milwaukee Bucks right behind them. It really feels like, the Cavs are good, but it feels like there's starting to be a little bit of separation where right now you have the Celtics and you have the Bucks, and then kind of everybody else. Like they are the top tier in the Eastern Conference. Is that the way you see it as well?
Yeah, I do. I had a couple other teams, Philadelphia, maybe the Nets in that grouping at the
Mhm.
beginning of the year, and obviously still enough time they could play themselves into it. But for now, yeah, I think Boston and Milwaukee. Not only do I think they're the two best teams in the East, I think they're the two best teams in the league
Mhm.
right now. I think they both have played really well. And what's important to know: 13-4 for Boston, 12-4 for Milwaukee. They're both doing this without a key starting player for both teams. Robert Williams still out for the Celtics. Chris Middleton still out for the Bucks. So we're just kind of in a spot here where it's these teams are just kind of chugging along doing their thing. One thing I heard, I believe it was Kevin Pelton noted this the other day.
Mhm.
Boston has played a much harder schedule than Milwaukee has, but Milwaukee has had some more guys out of the lineup beyond just Middleton. So 13-4, 12-4, pretty good start for both of those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the way the East is breaking down, are the Cavs in a tier of their own?
Yeah, they might be. I think Atlanta probably right there with them.
Okay.
Let's see what happens with Toronto, Philly, Brooklyn. I think they may get in that mix. I'm a little more worried about a couple of the other teams we'll get to a little further down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the Cavs. It certainly feels their record feels a lot more sustainable than Indiana and Washington, who are the next two teams. Washington is fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So
Right.
I am not going to believe the second time around. I'm gonna hold off on buying into the Wizards for now. Hey, and if they do, great. Happy to admit I was wrong, and it'll be a fun story. But in Indiana, 5 straight wins. They're
Yeah.
now 10-6. They're very fun to watch
Mm.
too. They play very fast. They get up and down the floor. Tyrese Halliburton's probably going to be right up there for league leaders and assists this season, coming off a Player of the Week nod too. Kind of just funny, right? Just it's Halliburton and Fox. One
Right.
player of the week, right? That's just come on NBA, you know what you're doing there. You can put one over on
That
us.
that that explains how somehow Anthony Davis got overlooked despite going for a
Quite
billion points and
possibly,
all the
right?
rebounds in the last week.
in a week where the Lakers won a bunch of games too,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but yeah, I mean, fun stories there. But yeah, the Cavs are very very good. They're not going to go away. They're going to be in that home court advantage mix. I think all season long.
Not as much of a sticky stat when we're still in this, small sample size period of the early season, but should be noted that the Cavs have the best point differential in the Eastern Conference right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that, suggests that maybe they will make a case that they're in that top tier, when all is said and done. And maybe it's a 3-team tier at the top, but we'll see. Right now I still have it as Boston and Milwaukee, and then the Cavs somewhat behind them. The Pacers, playing themselves out of the tank race. It looks like maybe is this Utah East here with Indiana. And I
Yeah, it
agree with
might
your
be.
skepticism on the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, it might be with Indiana. Well, let's see, what happens. I mean, again, sitting on $30 million in cap space or so, so there is a pretty good chance that we see the Pacers do something big, right? They could still make a big move. I think as long as they continue to play well, don't look for any kind of trades anytime soon that start to break that team down. I don't know that that's their intention this season.
Then you've got the Hawks, the Raptors, the Knicks in their own kind of section. I know there's been some injuries and things like that that have hit these teams, but I kind of thought that we would see. I expected to see Atlanta certainly above Indiana, Washington. I expected them to be more closer to being in the mix with the Cavs than where they're at currently. Is that going to be something that shifts, you think, as the season goes on? I mean, 10-7 isn't terrible.
No, I think it has the potential to get better there in Atlanta. I thought they might start off a little bit bumpy. I thought the DeJounte Murray, Trae Young groupings would take a little while to figure out those guys sharing a backcourt. Seemingly, they have done okay with each other. It's kind of everybody else around that. We've talked to the John Collins stuff before, where he's just not getting a lot of shots. He's getting his shots in weird spots. It's just kind of an odd fit. So there's definitely still work to be done there. But the Hawks, up until about the last, let's say, maybe weekish, had started to show some real defensive improvement, it looked like. Now we're starting to see the offense pick up, but now the defense is sliding a little bit. So, they're going to settle into, I think, being a good team. And again, this 4, 5, 6, 7 range feels about right for them.
And then you've got at the bottom of the play-in line, you've got the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets, both teams who have been dealing with a lot in terms of injuries. That you're missing players. The Nets obviously have more stuff than just that going on, but both of these teams possess a ton of talent if everybody is out there, everybody's healthy, and they can get everybody on the same page. So are these sleeping giants, or is this going to be kind of a sputter along and just hope that come playoff time you can make a push?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? We got to see what happens with these injuries. Philly's going to be down tonight. Embiid, Harden, and Maxey. They're going to be down, those two guys, at least tonight. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Oddly enough, playing Brooklyn in the Ben Simmons return game.
That's right.
So that's kind of fun.
Tobias Harris returning for them. So that helps at least.
Helps for sure.
Somewhat.
Yeah, they need somebody who can score the ball on that team. So yeah, I guess my challenge with the Philadelphia side is, are they going to get and stay healthy? Because I believe they'll get healthy. It's the stay healthy part that I'm not fully sold on. And then with the Nets, it's what happens next, right? Is all of the stuff and the drama around them, is it now behind them and they could just play basketball the rest of the way? Is there going to be more to come? History probably tells us there's probably more to come. And again, not a team without injury history either. So I think that's your challenge when you've gotten off to this 500-ish start for both teams. Now you don't have a bunch of wins that you banked early. So if you start missing guys, start missing games, and you play slightly below 500 for a month, you're fine. You're now in a little bit of trouble if you're these guys. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge for them is sorting through and figuring that stuff out. Is how hard do we push, and if we push, can we keep these guys here? And then I want to go back to a team just real quick if I can. Toronto, really just kind of soldiering along there in Toronto. Talk about injuries,
right?
Man, they've had, at times they've had 4 of the 5 starters out for the same game quite a bit. Pascal Siakam was playing at a ridiculous level, injured, and he's down for probably at least another week or so with that. So we'll see what happens. And then going back into the bottom 5, few teams we kind of expected, but a couple teams I don't think we did.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got, well, and you know what, just real quick, because we kind of skipped over them, the Knicks, they already had a players only meeting and done all that kind of stuff. I still think they just kind of are what they are. They're going to be a middle of the pack team. That's just what I see out of them. But
yeah, I completely agree on the Knicks 500 team that's going to be in the play-in tournament. I think that's where we both had them preseason, and that feels about right.
The bottom of the table, the Chicago Bulls and the Miami Heat. Certainly not where they want to be. And I want to start with the Bulls right now, sitting in 11th in the Eastern Conference. are we getting closer? Because this is a team that we said going into the season to keep an eye on to see if they don't have the kind of success that they're hoping to have. Do they make some drastic decisions prior to the trade deadline? Do you think we're pushing further down that path to where we may see them as a seller on the trade market sooner rather than later?
I think it's possible, but this next month for them is going to be huge. Can they kind of start playing better? It looks like Levine is finally starting to find his footing a little bit. Vucevic is coming around with a handful of strong games in a row. We'll see if they can kind of start to figure things out. Then they may go the other way, right? And they could be a buyer as they look to push into being there. I mean, the reality is right now, 6 is the goal for a team like Chicago, right? Get into that top 6 in the assured playoff spot and avoid the play-in tournament. And they're 3 games out of that, so plenty of time, clearly to make up that ground. They had a big win over Boston. They beat Boston twice, which is a little weird. The Celtics have lost 4 games, 2 in regulation to the Bulls and 2 in overtime to the Cavs. So Chicago, I guess, just positioned for a few more games against Boston, and you're probably doing okay. But yeah, I tend to think they're probably going to get better and better enough that they don't do any kind of sell-off. But we'll see. I mean, it's, Arturas Kanisovic learned at the Tim Conley side, and it could be a, hey, let's go in a slightly different direction here and do almost a 1-year pivot. But yeah, this next month's going to be big for the Bulls.
And then the Miami Heat, missing Jimmy Butler right now, but still this team is underperforming relative to expectations. I had them closer to, not necessarily, I think I had them in like my second tier in the East. Mm-hmm. And so this team, I was expecting this team certainly to finish higher than the Bulls, and yet here we are. They're sitting in 12th place in the Eastern Conference. What is going on with Miami? They've lost now 4 in a row.
When healthy, they have a huge hole in their front court next to Bam Adebayo. It's kind of Adebayo is the only real big man on the roster, and then not a lot else. Rookie Nikola Jovic is starting to show some stuff as they've played him, because what's happened in the last couple of weeks is, injuries have wiped these guys out. They've played a couple of games with only 7 or 8 players available. So that is really tough on a team. Kyle Lowry played the other night. He played a 50-minute game, played incredible, but we don't want Kyle Lowry playing, we don't want him playing 40 minutes, never mind 50.
When your age and your minutes match and you're 50, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So I think that's a challenge for them, but it's right now it's kind of get through it, but they got to figure out something at the 4. Now, sometimes, what is that quote? Necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Yeah. It's necessity is play Nikola Jovic because we literally have no one else. And they maybe are finally like, maybe this kid can play a little bit more than we thought. So maybe they've stumbled into something. We'll see, what they do. There's a lot of people who keep kind of screaming about, well, maybe a trade. I just don't know where that trade is coming from. Yeah. They're about out of tradable assets on that team. So we'll see. But mostly it's let's get healthy and see where we go from there.
And then at the bottom, you've got the Wembanyama 3. You've got the Orlando Magic, the Charlotte Hornets, the Detroit Pistons. All of them in different phases of kind of where they're building. Well, sort of. I guess the Magic and the Pistons are kind of in the same boat. But Charlotte, when they missed out on LaMelo at the beginning of the season, we said that might be an opportunity for them to really bottom things out. Feels like that's kind of the way they're going. They lost the last 3, mm-hmm. And then the Magic and the Pistons. The Pistons have lost their last 7 games, and they're missing Cade Cunningham now. This is a downward spiral that's going pretty fast. So I don't think any of these teams is necessarily that worried about their current situation right now. They're not looking at it saying, man, we need to do something to get out of this spot because they're going to get a solid draft pick out of this. But I just think this is going to be a chance for all 3 of these teams to see what they've got, play some of their younger players, and then regroup this summer.
Yeah, I don't know that any of these teams wanted to be in this spot. I think they're all hoping to be pushing up the standings a little bit, but this is kind of what happens when you're in this position. You don't have a ton of depth ready to step forward. You have some injuries and everything kind of goes sideways on you pretty quickly. And I think that's where we're at with these guys. I think, it's now we're back to where we expected to be, right? It's back into development time for these 3 teams. But the really important thing for especially Orlando and Detroit is you got to get those guys back on the floor, because wins and losses don't really matter for you right now. Losses are what
Development.
they are. It's you need those minutes. You need those minutes with those guys on the floor together. Figure out who fits, because next year you're hoping to start taking those steps forward, and that's a little bit of your challenge. And then Charlotte, I don't know. That's feeling like all right. We've got LaMelo as our one definite building block. Everything else around here, maybe we're willing to talk trade and see what we could do. And they could be a team we could see if they decide to lean in heavy. We could see them completely crater that thing out and just say, "Hey, LaMelo, let's say, oh, you need an extra 2 weeks for your ankle to get better. Sure, we're fine, because I mean it's just bad right now, and it's honestly it's not the worst thing in the world, because they're just kind of stuck where they are because of they just continue to make poor roster decisions. That Gordon Hayward contract. I mean, we're not exactly patting ourselves on the back here, but we're both like, wait, what now?
Right.
When that happened, and that's unfortunately the way it's played out.
Especially when we added in the reality of stretching Batum in order to make that happen. So it was like, what was an extra $10 million essentially per year that you had to look at as you're paying Gordon Hayward what he's making, which is like $30 million, and then on top of that, you're paying an extra $10 million to Batum. So you got to factor that into the deal too. It was mind-boggling.
Yeah. Now the good news is the Batum stretch ends after this year. The Hayward one that still got another year of money there, and I'm gonna guess he picks up that player option.
I think that's a pretty likely bet. All right, let's head down to
before we jump out.
Okay,
let's go back to the East if we can, real quick.
Yep,
we're saying, I think Chicago and Miami will get back in there. Who are we taking out of the mix? If we're saying Chicago and Miami get into the play-in, because I do feel like they will get into the play-in. Who are you taking out?
I mean, it feels weird with them being so high up in the standings right now, but the Wizards, I think, and the Pacers, I think, would be the two that would be the ones to fall out.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not. It's not like they've created a 7-game difference already. Right. I mean, they're let's see. The Pacers are 3.5 up on the Bulls, 4 up on the Heat. But yeah, that's still that's not enough of a difference to be
this early
functionally matter right now. So I'm with you. Same spot.
All right. Now let's head down to the Western Conference, where look at that. And just as everyone expected, the Utah Jazz sitting atop the West. They have started to cool off a little bit. They were red hot there for a while, 6-4 in their last 10 now, but still sitting at number 1 in the Western Conference, 12-7 on the season. And now we're hearing that they might be interested in trading for John Collins and like saying, okay, cool, we're just gonna go for it. It might not be what we had planned, but let's do this. Is Utah? Is this real? I guess that's the question. Is this real?
Yeah, it's tough because they've played of their 19 games, they've played 12. Basically, a third of their or 2/3 of their schedule has been played on the road already. So that's tough. To play that much. They've not only has it been played on the road, but they've had like weird road trips. That happens to those Midwest teams or mountain teams, I guess, like Utah and Denver, because sometimes they get put on these East Coast trips, but they're like when the Lakers or the Clippers or the Suns, the Warriors go east, they go east for like a week, week and a half. Sometimes Utah might go east for like 3 days, and then they come back and play, at home, and then they go back east again for like 2 days. It happens with those teams that are in the middle of the country. But I don't know, man. I'm just struggling to buy in fully because I look at it, it's kind of weird. Last night's loss to the Clippers was a good, fun game, but they're really going to miss Mike Conley while he's out. They miss his playmaking. Colin Sexton is a scorer. Jordan Clarkson is a scorer, first, second, third kind of guy. He's not super interested. So that put a lot on their bigs. Jared Vanderbilt flashing some passing skills and doing some stuff. Kelly Olynyk's a good passer, but it's weird. They play kind of that inverted offense a little bit, with the bigs are functioning more outside and those kind of things. So there's a lot of good players there. I don't know. I mean, we might still be having this conversation on January 1st. I'm like, I just don't know about the Jazz when they're still sitting somewhere in like the top 3 or 4 teams, and and I may be the one who looks like an idiot here. I'm fully open to that possibility.
Yeah, they've been certainly a pleasant surprise. I think they've already won too many games to say, whoa, let's switch things up here.
Yeah.
And
They're
let's
already
start.
8 games up on the Rockets.
Yeah. So
There, so
I don't think this team is going to tank anymore. I think if anything, there'll be a buyer on the market, and they'll see where this can go, and then go from there.
mhm.
All right, the Phoenix Suns,
Then it's like everybody else,
right? But
like until we get down further.
are the Suns the best team in the West? They've got the best point differential. They have a 10-6 record now. Chris Paul's been out of action, but
Mhm.
as much as we look at, okay, Utah's sitting in the 1 seed and Phoenix is in the number 2, I feel like the general perception is that Phoenix right now is the best team.
I can agree with that. I think Phoenix is doing a little bit of the been there, done that
Yeah,
routine with the regular season. I think they fully realize now, hey, if it's a back to back, we don't need to push really hard to win this. Like, let's just be in the top 4. Let's have home court. Let's move forward from that. So yeah, I think Phoenix has a chance to be the best team in the West. They may not finish with the best record in the Western Conference. We may see some one of these upstarts kind of catch them, but I do think Phoenix has a real chance to be one of the best teams in the West. They might be that team where we're kind of like, almost like Golden State a little bit last year at points.
sure.
Where it was like, I don't really care where they finish, but as long as they're kind of up there, I feel pretty good about it. That may be where we're at with Phoenix. Challenge for the Suns, though. Now we've kind of hit the point where I don't really care what you do here. It's the playoffs that matter. And that's always a tough spot for a team when those are become your expectations now is, all right, you need to win in the postseason because just getting back there and, winning the conference in the regular season, it's not enough anymore.
Correct. Yeah, especially after the way the playoffs played out last season, they have to exercise those demons, and that is not going to happen during the regular season here. If they finish with the 5 seed, if they finish with the 1 seed, all that anybody is going to care about, or all that's going to matter, is what they do in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say one thing that is super encouraging with them. Defense has not fallen off at all. I mean, they are still, doing their thing as a defensive team. Really kind of, maintaining that they're right up there with a lot of those other teams defensively.
And they should be executing a Jake Crowder trade at some point, and then maybe you can add some pieces that way. Yep. The Nuggets, not quite as like we had this pegged as. I believe they might have even been your team to finish first in the West.
I think I did pick them in the regular season, yes.
So have not been quite as good as we expected, but what do you attribute that to? Is there a little bit of the kind of, the been there, done that effect with Jokic, just because he's been MVP and everything, and they've got guys that have been coming back from injury when you talk about Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., is all of that kind of combining to a just kind of 10-6, cool, we're good for the Nuggets?
It's more that second one with the trying to get guys back again. Another mountain team, road heavy schedule to start the year, 2/3 other games on the road already. They've been very good at home, as they usually are. But yeah, I think they're trying to figure out how do we get Murray and Porter back in, and then unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, they went through, had an illness. They think it was termed non-COVID, but definitely had guys out in the health and safety protocols. So definitely had something to run through the team a little bit. So I think that's the tough thing, right? Because if you have one bad week this early in the year, all of a sudden it completely changes your trajectory of what your record looks like. So I still feel pretty good about Denver because, again, I think they're going to be all right. They need to pick up their defense, though. That they're not defending in ways that feel really good. And Michael Porter Jr. just came out and said just the other day, offense. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was something like offense should be on autopilot for me because I know what I need to do. I need to focus on the defensive end. And there's a lot of times you watch that team when he's in there, he's just kind of running around on defense and I don't even know what he's doing.
He's getting in the cardio.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, except it's like getting cardio by at least being near someone on the other team. Like
that would be helpful.
Yeah. He did when they played Boston the other day. He did this thing where it's like it looked like he was trailing his man around the screen, except his man didn't move out of the corner and he just ran around this whole screen action, and it was so weird. And then by the time he finally got back to his man back cut him for a layup. And I didn't think it was one of the oddest things I've ever seen. It was very, very, very I don't get it. It's Michael Malone immediately called timeout and put Porter on the bench. And I was like, that might be the end of Michael Porter for the night. It didn't end up going that way, but yeah, it was tough.
The Clippers sitting in the 4 seed currently at 11-7, got the win last night over the Jazz. They've dealt with a bunch of injuries. We've seen Paul George in and out of the lineup, Kawhi Leonard in and out of the lineup. And yet here they are. They're right kind of. This is where, early on in the season, they weren't shooting the ball very well and they were kind of low in the standings and people started to raise their eyebrows and stuff. And I'm like, this team has too much depth to not still be fairly decent, even with the guys that they have out of their lineup. And so far it's starting to stabilize here. And again, they've jumped all the way up to the 4 seed now in the West.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that, except they're playing like they should now. And Kawhi he's figuring it out again. Like he's starting to show some stuff here in these last couple games, especially as a passer. That's it. It's just a really good team.
All right, light the beam.
Beam team, let's go.
The winners of 6 straight now. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and they're in the 5th seed. Keith, we said this was going to be the season that the Sacramento Kings break their playoff drought, and here we are. They are the 5 seed right now. Now, again, it's very early. They are 1 game up on the 10 seed, so this could change in a couple of days very quickly. But for right now, Sacramento sitting in the 5 seed, playing good basketball, winning, and it seems like there's getting to be an air of confidence around this team that probably didn't exist in seasons past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we're 15 games in. And I'm basically, I don't know that I'm going to call them NBA record-breaking great offense, but I'm very ready to say this offense is good. And it's just going to be good. De'Aaron Fox, I know we talked about it just the other day when I hit you with the whole he's shooting 90% at the rim. But it is, I mean, they've got a lot of offensive weapons. I mean, a lot of guys who can do some stuff. There's going to be some stuff that levels off for sure. And that's where we'll see that dip a little bit. But I think they're going to finish probably as a top 10 offense in the NBA this year. And then if the defense, let's see, they are right now, I'm just pulling it up on Basketball Reference. They're 27th. So if you can nudge that up to around 20 and you can be a top 10 offense, you'll be a playoff team.
That could help you mitigate any kind of just natural regression that you're going to see on the offensive end. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is not going to finish the season shooting 90% at the rim. It's not going to happen. So if you can do that, then maybe you can kind of keep yourself right about where you're at and stabilize everything. The Pelicans sitting in the 6th seed, 10-7. Also 1 game back out of first. Though again, the West is ridiculously compact. This team, though, positive 6.3 point differential helps when you blow out the Warriors. What was the final score? They blew it up. Blew the Warriors by 45.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That
now
will
it was
change
the
your point differential.
Warriors in quotation marks because they left basically everybody home.
Yes.
And didn't go. So, but yeah, still, I mean, 45-point wins are
and Zion had like 9 or something. It wasn't like their guys all had these crazy blow up games or anything like that. It was like the whole team chipped in. This team is good. This is a good team.
Very good.
They're a fun team to watch. And I'm not surprised at all that their 6th seed. Wouldn't surprise me if they finished higher than this. I think they're going to be solid as long as they can stay healthy.
Yeah, and they're deep too. They've got a lot of talent up and down. They've got a couple interesting potential trade pieces too. If they decide, hey, we really need to go get this for our roster. That's a good team there in New Orleans. They're not going away.
And then we've got the Grizzlies. I mean, you look at the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, the Blazers. Like technically, you've got the Grizzlies and the Blazers are in the play-in, whereas the Pelicans are not. They all have the same record, right? They all have the same record. The West, again, insanely
half game behind second place. So,
the 10 seed is 2 games back of the 1 seed. Like this is insane. But the Grizzlies, dealing with injuries to Ja Morant, sounds like he may be back in action tonight.
Yeah,
that would be awesome to see.
That'd be great.
I think this team is probably a little bit better than what their record currently shows. And once they get everybody healthy, once they get Jaren Jackson Jr. fully reincorporated, I think we'll start to see what they can really be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And they very interestingly enough kept Danny Green. There's some thought maybe Danny Green will get back to maybe help them as a rotation guy. But if nothing else, that's a $10 million contract that can be used in trade for them to go get something. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Memphis make a move, just kind of one of those, hey, we need to bolster our bench a little bit because we don't necessarily want to rely on first and second year guys quite as much there. But yeah, I mean, good team. And, again, we talked about guys taking advantage of their opportunities. Santi Aldama, when this team, was down, Jaren Jackson Jr. played really, really well to the point where sometimes guys do that. And then it's just, well, now they're a rotation guy. I can't, just because somebody else came back, they can't lose their spot. And they're just, I mean, good player, could really do some stuff. That's another guy too, who sometimes in summer league, you can kind of see it coming. And he looked great in summer league this year. He just almost looked like, why is he here? Which he obviously should have been there because he was not great as a rookie. But then I was like, all right, maybe there's a little something going on here, and it's carried over.
All right, Portland at one point was the 1 seed in the Western Conference.
Yeah, like a week ago.
But yeah, they've lost their last 3, and so that's all it takes in the West. So you lose a couple of games, and you're the 8 seed. Next thing you know, but calf strain for Damian Lillard, again, going to be reevaluated in about a week-ish, maybe 2 weeks. We'll see what happens there. What is this Portland team? How good are they really? I don't buy that they're the 1 seed in the Western Conference. I take that as just kind of small sample size craziness happening. But is this a solid playoff team that should be in the mix here?
If they're healthy, yes. They don't have the depth to get through. Like we talked about, New Orleans has great depth. Memphis has done a really good job developing their depth. Denver, Clippers, Suns. That's the difference. The Portland Trailblazers, their top 7 guys are all pretty good. I'd put them up with most other teams. The problem is if you start missing 1 or 2 of those top 7 guys, now all of a sudden you're seeing it show up where it's like, oh boy, it's pretty ugly behind those guys. And they're not in a great spot to add a lot either. It'd really have to be kind of a shuffle of send some money out and a productive guy out. So yeah, but if they're healthy, they're tough. And they could be a team where if they're down here and they're in the play-in, they're going to be a team where it's like, I really don't want to deal with Damian Lillard in the first round. And, he could win a game or 2 almost all by himself. And then, they have a game where, him and Simons and Sharp and a bunch of other guys hit, 23 pointers and we lose again. Now, all of a sudden we're in a series that we didn't expect to be in. Kind of what happened with New Orleans and Phoenix a year ago, where it's like, we didn't expect to have this kind of trouble. And the next thing you know, here we are. So we'll see, where it goes with the Blazers, but they just got to keep, churning the bottom of that roster and try to find some guys who can pop and step forward.
And then you've got the Mavs sitting in the 9 seed right now. I mean, this team is as superstar centric as any team in the NBA, probably more so. Everything is just dependent on Luka. How long can you really do this? Like he's young, but he has to do so much heavy lifting for this team. And I don't know how they get that other piece that they need to go find. I know they've got some contracts they can move and things, and they're going to be on the lookout for it. But it really is. This team's going to go as far as Luka takes them, and that's it.
Yeah, do you know what Luka's usage rate is right now? And I'm using Basketball References.
It's got to be like 40% or something.
Pretty close, 38.3.
I knew it had to be ridiculously up
there. I mean, they need him to create almost everything. He's also playing 37 minutes per game. That's something I'm a little bit worried about. Not gonna freak on it too much because they play at an absolute glacial pace, like the slowest team in the league. I think I want to say it's by a pretty good amount too. I can pull that up here and look at it, but they're they are almost 2 full possessions less than Cleveland, who's the next slowest team. So I mean, it is just get it to Luka, walk it up. Their defense does quite well with that because then they're able to lock in. They set their defense. But yeah, you gotta. I mean, have a broken record with this, and we all are. But got to get Luka some help. The other thing too is they played 11 of their first 16 at home. So kind of the reverse of a couple of teams we talked at the top. They're going to start going on the road here, including a trip into Boston this week. Now, Luka's worked magic there the last few years, so we'll see what happens. But I'm a little bit nervous about Dallas just because there's some stuff there that I don't know. But playoff team probably still, but wouldn't surprise me if they're in the play-in.
Yeah, absolutely. The Minnesota Timberwolves were a team that we were looking at currently in the 10 seed. saying what's going on with this team. And now they've won 4 straight. And in the West, that's bumped them up to the 10 seed. Have they righted the ship? Is everything good to go now when they're going to be the team that we thought they would be heading into the season? Or is there still cause for concern up north in Minnesota?
Yeah, maybe. Rudy Gobert, their last game, didn't take any shots from the field. There's already stuff about Anthony Edwards passes to him less than Donovan Mitchell did.
Yeah, I was going to say Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to pass on the ball. Now
Right.
he goes up to Minnesota, and Anthony Edwards doesn't want to pass on the poor Rudy Gobert, man. Somebody share the ball with him.
Right. So I'm not going to go as far as saying it's all fixed, but I think they were playing far below their potential to begin the season. But I think this is probably about what they are, right around 500-ish team. I know some people thought, hey, regular season team, let's boost them way up in the standings. They might win a whole bunch of games. But if you're going to have a team like Sacramento and Portland, those teams play better than you expect. Some teams have to play worse, and Minnesota might be one of them. So probably in the play-in mix, but we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if they slipped out just because it is a little bit messy there.
And then I don't know how this is the case, but there's a tier break, and the Golden State Warriors are sitting in this lower tier.
Yeah.
Like, and the longer they stayed, like this was at the beginning of the season, it was it's just early, they're not playing that hard, that type of thing, but the longer they stay down here in the muck of the bottom of the Western Conference, the more you start to wonder, like, is this real, or is this they're just not really pushing down on the gas pedal? Now they're not out of it by any means. Again, they're 3.5 games out of first place because once again the West is insanely compact, but still, it's at this stage of the season to see the Warriors sitting in the 11th seed, it becomes more concerning by the day.
Yeah, and if we don't see them rip off like a 4 or 5 game win streak here pretty soon, you start to really be like, all right, where are we going with this group? 7-1 at home, 1-9 on the road. That's kind of the record profile of generally a bad team. Is like one of those kind of rebuilding teams where they get that bump at home and they play quite well, and then on the road they don't play as well. But yeah, it's weird. And now they're obviously not concerned. They just, like we talked about, they just threw that game away completely at New Orleans. Said, we're not even going to bring, Curry and Green and Thompson and Wiggins. And, a lot of our regulars just stay out. You're not going to play. And they completely got destroyed, which, hey, if you're still willing to throw games away where, you get a win in that game, now you're 9-9, you're 500, you're feeling maybe a little bit better about that. But my guess is they still feel like, all right, we've got a run in us. I'm going to keep hammering on it until they do something about it. Got to fix the bench. This is no longer the Warriors where the starters hand over 15 and 20 point leads by the time you go to the bench. The starters are handing over a 5-point lead, and then that terrible bench is not able to hold it. And that's been their single biggest issue right now. Curry's playing as good as he's ever played. He could be the MVP this year, if not for the team being 8-10.
Yeah, exactly. And so the question becomes, when do they kick it in? When's that going to happen? What's that going to look like?
Yep.
All right. Bottom of the conference. One of these teams is not like the others. That the Thunder, the Spurs, and the Rockets are all essentially going into the season saying, hey, we're going to be bad. Greg Popovich obviously infamously said, don't bet on us to win a championship and all of that.
Thanks for that advice, Pop, too, especially when you sit main guys, willy-nilly here and there. Like, I don't know, did you see the whole Devin Vassell thing the other night?
No, I didn't.
Like, oh, Devin Vassell's in the lineup. Oh, Devin Vassell's out. No, wait, he's going to actually play. No, wait, he's actually out. And he ended up out. And, there's been a lot of that stuff where, like, these guys, magical one-game injuries, and then they're back. I think the Spurs are starting to manage things a little bit.
Managing the tank. Yeah. You've got look OKC. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been phenomenal. He's dropping 30 like basically every single night. He's been incredible. They've got some pieces there that can be interesting, but again, they kind of have to sit near the bottom here and get another high draft pick and then go from there before they're going to try.
And you're seeing with them. Sorry to interrupt you, but you're seeing with them their talent imbalance now too. Yeah. They've got Gilgeous-Alexander and a bunch of interesting younger guys who are kind of trying to figure things out in the NBA for themselves, and that's where they're really kind of you see it kind of all fall apart there. But in some ways, that's not the worst thing, because it's like they play super close games. They're in, most of these games.
Mhm.
Gilgeous Alexander plays really well, and then they lose, which kind of when you're rooting for a rebuilding team in a year where there's generational talent at the top of the draft, you're probably like, not the worst thing in the world. We get to see a really good close game. Our guys played well, and we lost. So moving on.
Yeah, the best thing really would be to lose every game by 1.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's your
It's
best
funny.
case
I
scenario.
said that once to a coach, and the coach was like, "Yeah, and you know what happened? You would get fired, and no one would be happy." And he goes, "So no, from a coaching standpoint, I do not want to lose every game."
No, correct.
But
Yeah, coaches.
you don't want to get drilled and get your tail kicked every single game, because then there's no interest in people
Right.
Are out on the season. But yeah, for sure.
Now, they've already won 7 games, so I do think
Mhm.
that they're probably they're a better team than the Spurs or the Rockets, certainly.
Agreed.
I think so. I think they are kind of in their own little tier there. The Spurs they're not good at basketball. It's a bad team, and like you said, they are trying to, we're seeing them do some things that they're trying to bottom this thing out, and they're being successful at it.
Yeah, when you're sitting Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell here and there, Jakob Pertl even on occasion, and it's not a criticism by any means. I think Greg Popovich and staff there know kind of, all right, we know what the deal is. Play them enough that they get those minutes and they develop. And Keldon Johnson, everybody by now should know I absolutely love that dude.
Mhm.
And Devin Vassell's rapidly climbing up my list. I think those two guys are really, really good. And then Jakob Pertl, we'll just see if he sticks in San Antonio or not. My guess is we might see him get traded. Much like Derek White a year ago, it might be a little bit of like, all right, hey, by the time we're ready to really do this thing, you're probably not going to be a part of it. So maybe we move on from you and get what we can, draft pick wise and young player wise. So we'll see. But yeah. And then the Rockets are just, I mean, they're naturally bad, which is, again, it's fine. They're super young. God, they are frustrating though to watch, because it's like, all right, we're kind of hanging in this one. Oh, here comes a quarter where in the 8 minutes we score 2 points and we have 7 turnovers.
And the game's over.
Yeah, and then the next thing, exactly. Now we're down 15 and the game's over. Like, it's just, I mean, they do some weird stuff as far as like, balls that are, sailing 8 rows deep into the seats, and, or like 2-on-1 breaks, and guys are just, basically handing it to the other. It's just weird stuff, but they're super young. They'll figure it out. Jabari Smith, maybe starting to show a little bit of signs, but good Lord, Houston's guards, please make it easier on this man. Like, give him passes in places where he can score. Stop ignoring him on the roll so you can shoot a crappy, step back pull up from 20 feet. Like, I can't take any more of those.
It's powering the tank, though.
Yeah, sure, but I mean, come on, get your big.
You're not winning games either way.
Yeah, work with the kid.
My Lakers, currently the only team that hasn't won a game on the road, I believe, in the NBA.
That's right.
They do head out on the road now to take on Phoenix. I mean, that's going to be a difficult matchup. No LeBron James again. So they've been dealing with injuries. We've already seen that happening. Anthony Davis came into the season with a bulky back, and then you've got LeBron dealing with the adductor issue. So injuries already kind of ramping up for them, but they also had an absolutely brutal first 10, 12 games, especially when suddenly, like, for the Lakers perspective, we were looking at everything going, oh my God, this schedule is horrible. Oh, but at least there's a couple of games against the Jazz.
Yeah.
Oh, and then that turned out to be not any kind of a reprieve at all. And so they got some games against some weaker competition more recently. You got the Brooklyn Nets missing Kyrie Irving, second night of a back-to-back. By the way, the last 3 games have been second night of a back-to-back where they played the Clippers the night before. Historically, it feels like it's always the opposite, where the Lakers get them the first night, Clippers get them the second. So
yeah, it feels like there's always like Lakers play them on the Sunday, and then the Clippers get them on the Monday. Yeah.
Yep. But played some weaker competition in the Detroit Pistons and then the San Antonio Spurs, and so they picked up a few wins there. I don't know. I mean, I still think this team shouldn't be sitting quite where they are. I think some of this is the difficulty of the schedule. They also shot unsustainably poorly to start the season. They were at 21% from 3 for the first 5 games or what. I mean, just historically bad. So I did expect that to level out a little bit. I don't know if I could put them up into the mix just yet, but things are starting to look a little bit better as Anthony Davis gets healthier. The question then becomes, can LeBron get healthy? Can he stay healthy? And then what do you do from there if you make trades or anything like that?
Yeah, two things that are worrisome for me with the Lakers is very home heavy schedule so far, 10 home games, only 5 road games. And they, as you said, they've been poor on the road. So that's a little worrisome, there, because now that just means there's 5 more road games coming, later this year, than there are home games. The other thing is kind of like we talked about with Portland, they can't have injuries because they just don't have the depth to sustain it. When you're missing, one or two, or sometimes, it seems like 3 kind of ish of the star guys, you can't play that way. It's just not, there's just not enough there. Anthony Davis playing great. I think you and I talked about it. Maybe it was, somewhere else that I was, but I am worried of, like, can he sustain this kind of usage? Like, this is
Sure.
like young, first few years in the league, Anthony Davis usage levels right now. So it sounds awesome, but like, is this guy going to have anything left in the tank come like March and April if you're trying to, play must-win games to get into the, into the postseason mix? So,
Right.
so I'm a little bit worried there, but the reasons for optimism are shooting a little bit better. I think Darvin Ham's kind of getting guys figured into the roles and the rotation. And
You got Schroeder and Thomas Bryant came back to help round things out a little bit.
Yeah. They've got to do something to rebalance. Just they need another wing. Yeah. They've got too many guards. Too many guards masquerading as wings, I guess, is the best way to put that. But you get LeBron back, you get, keep AD rolling, and Russ keeps doing his thing off the bench. Yeah, I mean, you could see this reverse, and we've talked about it, multiple times on this show. I'm sure you've talked it ad nauseum, and I know Lakers fans know no reason to tank, don't have their control of their draft pick.
Right.
So you might as well just go out there and try to win games as much as you can. But yeah, I think they're being very smart. I think there's a point where it's like, all right, we don't need to push LeBron. Like, let's get back when you're not 95, 96, 97%, 100%. That's when we'll play you. We don't need to do anything more than that. So yeah, we'll see with this. All right, I'm gonna ask you the same question.
Yeah.
So Warriors, I think we both feel still good. Warriors will get in there, into the top 10. Do you feel like the Lakers are going to get into that top 10 too?
It's so dependent on health and if the front office does something or doesn't. It's hard to say if they're going to do it or not.
Right now, I'm going to say no, just based on kind of where they're at.
Yeah.
So I'll say the Warriors in. I'm going to take out of the mix, maybe a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to take Minnesota out. I think Portland
I think that's fair.
Finishes ahead of Minnesota. The Jazz, I still like, man, I wanted it to say Utah, but they've just
so
played too good. I can't do that right now. So yeah, so I'm going to say Warriors get in, Minnesota gets out, and that's kind of what your 10 looks like in the West.
Well, and that's the other piece of this for the Lakers, right? Is we look at the Western Conference, you just went, oh my God, there's 12 playoff teams here. Yep. Like, if it's no matter what happens, you've got at least 2 playoff teams that are going to be out. And so the hope for the Lakers was, okay, the Kings and the Blazers, those 2 have to be non-playoff teams essentially, and both of them have performed, I think, better than expectations. Portland dropped off a little bit recently, but both teams have been really good, certainly better than the Lakers. And so now it's, are the Lakers going to be that team that's on the outside looking in? And that's the way it's shaping up right now. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. But it's not just what are the Lakers doing, it's what are the teams that they were hoping would be kind of the bottom of the play in or below that play in line doing, and those teams are exceeding expectations right now. So that compounds the problem.
Yeah, I think when we are having this conversation in like February and March, and the standings obviously at that point matter a lot more, you start to look at, and you can say things like, all right, the Lakers are in 12th, but they're only 2 games out of 7th or something. But then the challenge becomes but that's still 5 teams in between there that we have to climb.
And those teams have to lose.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it gets hard, because it's you're only a couple games back, but it becomes we've got to climb all these teams to get to where we want to be. I will say this, like, it's got to be shoot for the play-in, hope we're healthy, and then we're going to make our run into the play-in and try to be a problem in the first round. I cannot see them. I fully recognize that it's only a few games right now. I just can't see them climbing up into the top 6, just because, again, that factor, that's way too many teams.
It's a lot.
You need you need 7-8 teams to kind of start really going south while you go really north to pass them in the standings.
It would take some kind of surprise trade or something where they get like 3 really solid rotational
Sure.
players back, and it totally
Yeah.
balances things out. That and you get
Yeah.
healthy to make that kind of a
Mhm.
run. But
Yeah, without a doubt, I agree.
yeah. All right. Well,
We
we
did
went
it.
through every team. We covered the entire table here, and I think that was a good summary of where things are at in the NBA. We'll see where things are at news wise, whether or not we're going to do a pre-Thanksgiving show tomorrow. But we'll check in and go from there. I know I've got to hit the road early in the afternoon, so hopefully we'll have time to get something in. And if not, hope everybody has a very happy Thanksgiving. We'll be off for Thanksgiving Thursday and Friday. And yeah, eat some good food, hang out, and watch some World Cup soccer.
Yeah, you got football of one kind in the morning, then you got football
Right.
of the other kind in the afternoon and evening. So yeah, my go-to on Thanksgiving is enjoy the food, family, and football.
That's
And
right.
you've got two different kinds. So have fun. It's a day off for the NBA. So generally tends to be really truly a day off where nothing really goes on. So yeah, it's enjoy it, guys. Remember, it's even if you're not super into the whole Thanksgiving part of it, it's hopefully a chance to rest and relax and enjoy some other stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a great one. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.